using evidence-based practices. And they also have to submit edits to their return to in-person learning plan, which they submitted last year based on updated CDC guidance. And similar to the state, they also have a maintenance of equity provision where they need to maintain state and local support for the highest poverty schools within their district. And so, you know, we really look forward to working with districts on how best to use these funds, and understand that this is sort of a once in a lifetime infusion of federal funds, and we want to make the best of it. So I'm happy to entertain any questions, but I wanted to just give you a brief update that these funds are available now, and we're doing a lot of thinking and hopefully careful planning in the next couple of months. Thanks.
Vice Chair Morton.
So is the idea that you're applying for funds and you're asking districts to apply before we actually have the funds? Is that what?
So we've been given 2/3 of the funds.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and we're applying for the next third, but we have enough right now that yeah, we can start the application process. And we expect that because districts are going to have to go through consultation, that it'll take a little bit of time. And by the time that we start getting you know, more applications, we'll likely have that final third.
Gotcha.
Matt had his hand up.
Oh, thank you, Member Hills.
Is there any protocol in place to ensure that the funding in the different from the different streams is going to initiatives that address what's happened over the last 15 months instead of being used for funds that would have otherwise been allocated from the city or town anyway? Imagine a city or town with their own financial issues. Maybe there's not enough funding coming in. Maybe a mayor doesn't want to go for an override. These funds are displacing funds that otherwise would have gone. I understand this is not a clear test, but is there any attempt to make sure this is primarily for new initiatives?
So we're certainly you know, providing in the grant application itself a list of strong evidence-based practices that we've actually talked about in the Student Opportunity Act to address the COVID-19 situation. These funds technically don't have a supplement not supplant provision, so they actually can be used to supplant local funds. There are a couple of issues with that, though. And so we're telling districts that they really need to exercise caution, because all of the other federal grant streams have in some way or another supplement not supplant requirements, and they also have what's called maintenance of effort provisions, which basically says if you're going to take, say, IDEA funds, you need to make sure that you continue to spend the same amount of local and state dollars in your district as you did the prior year. So, you know, even though there is no supplement not supplant, districts could possibly use this to supplant. They have to be very, very thoughtful and careful that they don't just, you know, cut their local funding, because they could be in trouble with other federal grants that come in every single year.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one sort of follow-up to what Matt said. Local governments are also getting, you know, a much even larger stream of federal resources in direct local aid. So I can't think of any sort of good excuses for why they might want to use ESSER funds to supplement local revenues, given the fact that they're getting significantly more local, they're significantly new federal revenue streams directly into their into local treasuries. The other question, though, I have is, my understanding is the application process is not one in which the department gets to exercise much discretion other than to ensure that they are complying with the process itself. So they could go through the process and sort of ask for funds and provide a plan for how those funds would be spent, which we think is, terrible in terms of what they may want to do, but there's really nothing we can do to either withhold those funds or put constraints upon how they're used. Is that pretty much
Yeah. I mean,
correct?
they have to at least provide us with a good line to, this is how we're using these funds in order to prevent, prepare for, and mitigate the effects of COVID-19. So as long as they can draw a straight line from, this is the intervention that I want to do, this is our plan of attack, we've done all this consultation in our community and we feel like this is the best way forward, and it has to do with COVID mitigation efforts, then they can use the funds in that manner.
But the bottom line is it's pretty broad discretion.
They're pretty broad.
Yeah.
It is pretty broad. It is pretty broad.
Great.
I don't want to give the impression that it's a slush fund that they could spend on anything, but it is. It's, as federal grants go, it's pretty broad.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, everybody.
Work in progress.
We're going to postpone Como's second presentation today, so if you could work on some of the members' questions and do that in
Okay.
June, which is exciting. And we do need to, however, move to the vote for the amendments for student learning time. I think Deb and Rob are here to give a quick overview, reminder of what we're doing. This is the final vote. We've taken the preliminary vote already. And Deb, I turn it to you.
Thank you, Commissioner, members of the board. Good to be with you again. As the Commissioner said, we're returning for a final vote on the amendments to the student learning time regs that the board voted on in March. Those were the amendments that permitted the Commissioner to determine when hybrid and remote learning would no longer count towards student learning time, so supported the return to in-person instruction for students. As you know, the Commissioner exercised the authority under those regulations to return students in a phased manner, elementary students on April 5, then middle school students, high school students as of May 17. So just a quick reminder about the process. The regs were adopted on an emergency basis in March. We went through the public comment period, which was open until April 23rd. We are not recommending any changes to the regulations, so they are the same as what the board voted on in March, and we're coming back to you now for a vote on the final adoption of the regs.
Thank you. Any comments? Hearing none. Do I hear a motion? Thank you. Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, so our next item is the State Student Advisory Council end-of-year report.
We have Member Jasper Coughlin.
We have Member Coughlin. Did you want to say a few words about this?
So I'm just currently waiting for the clicker to come my way, but I'll start by saying, first of all, just thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner, Secretary Pizer. I just want to start off by expressing my gratitude for being able to work with the amazing students that I have been able to do so this year and last year. I really look forward to SSAC this year more than ever because I knew that the type of students who participate in SSAC were not the type of students who would let the COVID get in the way of progress that we could be making this year. And I just want to draw the parallel between the dedication of the students on SSAC with the dedication of the students of Massachusetts as a whole. So the SAC is the medium through which the student voices are amplified to the Board of Education, hence why I'm here. We got off to a late start this year, starting only in October, hence why I only started coming to these meetings in October. Despite our late start, we all got straight to work and developed our goals for this year. And some fast facts about SSAC: we have 144 RSAC delegates total, and that includes 43 SSAC delegates, and that number should be 44, which draws to a bigger theme of participation I'm going to talk about later. And there are 69 schools represented on SSAC this year. As the chair, I guided the SSAC in divvying ourselves up into 3 main work groups, which in the SSAC membership sought to be reflective of the problems facing students today. These issues were diversity, equity, inclusion, COVID, and health and wellness. So first I'll start with DEI, our DEI committee. Their initial goals were to bring awareness to obstacles that lower income students face in schools, to foster inclusive school cultures, and add ASL to world language curriculum. This year, the DEI work group generated surveys regarding racial equity and LGBTQ+ equity, and analyzed the state of financial literacy courses in Massachusetts schools. They created resources concerning racial equity and disability equity, and they interface with various people from the department throughout the process. The COVID-19 work group, their goals were to ensure communication between remote and hybrid students, collect data regarding student mental health and during the pandemic, and promote student voice during the COVID decision-making process. This year, the COVID-19 group sent out a survey to collect data on student performance and mental health during the pandemic, and they produced a wide array of data to be seen in the final report. And the final report, I believe board members will have access to sometime in June. And then lastly, health and wellness. Our health and wellness group initially sought out to create legislation to promote mental health resources and education in schools. They sought to integrate mental health into school curricula and to provide resources directly to teachers and students. During the school year, the work group drafted an amendment proposal regarding educator licensure and mental health, which we worked on the department with through the amazing Rhoda Schneider and other people in the department. We explored other legislative channels to support mental health. We researched accessibility of health curricula and compiled mental health resources for students and faculty. Earlier this year, in about October, November, it was more of a whole of SSAC approach. We sent out a survey to approximately 5,000 students and got approximately 5,000 responses. This survey was generally just about academic performance and mental health when the pandemic was getting going and how we were starting the school year. And so one of the main themes we got from this survey was the high level of frustration and anxiety that students were facing during the beginning of the school year with COVID, and we used the data from this survey to inform our work for the rest of the school year. In closing, I really just truncated my reflections from this year's SSAC into 4 key themes: participation, communication, research, and preparation. So participation, this year SSAC unfortunately witnessed an extremely low level of participation. In a normal year, there would be upwards of 50 students crammed into this very room, usually. But this year we had between 40 and 50 students on Zoom together, and often the regional groups were meeting without their elected leadership. Some members completely fell off the grid, hence why we only had 43 state delegates as opposed to 44. And personally, this is what I see as our biggest setback this year, and I would have loved to see what SSAC could have done with more participation. I am pleased, however, to watch the department take an active role in attempting to amp up participation and to receive participation from historically underrepresented districts on SSAC. The next one is communication. This year, we were forced to entirely redesign the way we communicate externally with our classmates and with fellow delegates. This forced us to rethink our position on social media and to get the ball rolling on becoming an SSAC with real connections to our peers. Recently, SAC was digitized and moved our files to Google Drive, and similarly, we established presences on social media this year. The Northeast region, in particular, developed a very impressive Instagram following. In pursuit of bettering our communication skills, the leadership and I developed a set of guidelines which we put in place for next year on how the SSAC should communicate externally to promote unity and message. Research. We were faced with many difficulties when it comes to external communication and taking more executive or taking on more projects this year, so SSAC conducted more research this year than likely any year past. We conducted extensive research on many topics, including financial literacy, racial equity, mental health, and more, and you saw that research earlier in the presentation. And lastly, preparation. As our year came to a close, the SSAC leadership and I saw it best for us to adequately prepare the next generation of student leaders for an SSAC which was more productive than we've had. To accomplish this, we set in place new bylaws for mid-year recruitment and set in place new policies regarding communication both internally and externally. I also tasked each work group with providing advice to next year delegates. some reflections. As each of us know, this year has been like no other, and that each student in the Commonwealth and in the world has experienced their own unique set of troubles that seem almost impossible to surmount. Despite the pandemic, the virtual meetings, the piling assignments, and external stressors, the SAC was able to come together and dedicate themselves to the important work of amplifying student voices, which I believe is symbolic to the perseverance and strength of every student in Massachusetts. Working as the chair of the SAC has been the experience of a lifetime, and being able to represent the students of Massachusetts to this board is an honor like no other. I'd also like to express my gratitude to Donna Taylor for helping facilitate our group this year, and to the students who worked so hard. And with that, questions. I also really tried hard to mimic all of the presentation styles that we've seen. And so it doesn't look exactly the same, like the star at the bottom is off-centered, but
Well done with your template sharing.
thank you.
And congratulations, Jasper, on everything this year. It's been a tough year, as you point out from the data that you just showed us, but also for hanging in there with us this whole time, too. And I'll take any questions. Member Moriarty.
First of all, thank you very much for the oversight. I think most everyone here is an organizational leader in some capacity or another, so you have had that experience this year as well under the most trying of circumstances. And I think the fact that the organization has held together and is in a place to move on for next year is a testament to the good work you've done, so congratulations for that. And I guess my question is, after a year like this, how well poised do you think your successor and the students coming into the group next year are ready to go, and what can we do to help give them more solid footing if there's some challenges?
Yeah, so I think the students for next year are very well poised. I know some of the people who are going to be running for my position, and I think that all of them are extremely qualified. And I think that the policies that we set in place at the end of this year, specifically mid-year recruitment and the communications bylaws, or communications policies specifically, set in place a more, I wouldn't want to say rigid, but a more like established guideline on how we should communicate with each other as a student advisory council, which I believe was probably, aside from participation, our biggest drawback this year was that we didn't have a single channel of streamlined communication, and that's something that I sort of tried to set up for next year. So ideally, because of all the reflection we've done this year, SAC next year will be able to reach out to more students and have more of a presence in every student's daily lives as their representatives to the board, and they'll be able to work more efficiently together to take on more projects.
Good.
Vice Chair Morton.
So, Jasper, George Washington's going to be lucky to have you.
Thank you.
You've been, very impressive, and today was a perfect example of that. We've always had the benefit of great students who've served on this board, and those students have always provided us with useful and thoughtful input. And so I want to thank you for you having played that role. Now, I know this isn't your last meeting, but I wanted to make sure that we let you know that right now rather than a month from now. But I am particularly interested in whether one comment you made is going to end up in the minutes for our meeting. And that was your reference to the amazing Rhoda Schneider. She is, in fact, amazing. Yeah. And so that says something about you as well.
I think that should end up in the minutes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that says something to you about you as well, and that you've made a point of recognizing those folks that have supported you in this role. And so I want to thank you for that.
There's also so many more recognitions to go around, to the commissioner, to everyone at the department, basically, and to Donna Taylor and all the other advisors, and even my vice chair, Jack Kamataris, and communications coordinator, Alex Lee. There's so many people to thank for this.
Awesome. Good job.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Once again, Jasper, thank you for your service with us. We're sorry to see you go, but we know George Washington awaits you in the fall. Congratulations once again.
And that final report should be done, or should be to all of the board members by June.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our last topic today, because we think it'll be some time. Oh, one more thing. Vice Chair Morton reminded me that I neglected to do the minutes. So can I have a motion on approving the minutes? Okay, and seconded by Member West. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the update on early college and innovation pathway programs. This is something that we should be super excited about because it is an equity lens as well for a lot of kids in the Commonwealth. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. The career vocational technical education programs that the board discussed at the February 22 special meeting are part of the Commonwealth's broad initiative to support high-quality college and career pathway programs. On May 25th, the board will hear a report, that's today, on two other important components of the initiative, early college and innovation pathways. Kristen Hunt is here to discuss early college, and Jennifer Guakin is here on the innovation pathways. They'll be here to do some presentation. Welcome, folks. Looks like they're joined by Julia Landau as well.
yes.
We have a three-part presentation for you. Let's see. Nice to meet you. Leaving you all alone. Do we have a clicker for the?
Oh, the elusive clicker.
Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very good. Welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome to Julia, who I first met in 2000 when we were rewriting the special education laws in Massachusetts. And she was on the other side of the issues that I was on, and we always have mutual and deep affection and respect for one another.
Thank you. So hello, Chair Craven, members of the board, Secretary Pizer, and Commissioner Riley. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Kristen Hunt, and I'm the Director of Massachusetts Early College Programs. I, along with my colleague Jennifer Guakin, are here to speak to you on two high-quality college and career pathways, early college and innovation pathways. These pathways are designed to allow high school students to both envision and experience post-secondary opportunities in high school, making them more likely to continue their pursuit after high school graduation. We are also joined by Julia Landau, Senior Project Director at Massachusetts Advocates for Children, to speak to how post-secondary opportunities are vital for all students, including those with significant intellectual disabilities. She will also share how the Massachusetts Initiative for Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment, a program run through the Department of Higher Education, makes these opportunities a reality. Well, let's see if I can. Okay. Early college and innovation pathways, along with CVTE programs, are part of a broader initiative initially known as High Quality College and Career Pathways. While each of these three pathways embody mutual principles and program components, they each have a different emphasis. Early college focuses on deep engagement with the college planning process, the relation between foundational college coursework, potential majors and career opportunities, and the actual attainment of at least 12 college credits. Innovation Pathways promotes broad exposure to a high-level industry sector, relevant advanced coursework, and rigorous work-based learning opportunities. Massachusetts adopted 5 guiding principles to undergird the college and career pathways. These are equitable access, guided academic pathways, enhanced student support, connection to career, and effective partnerships. The importance of equitable access cannot be overstated as one of the main goals of these programs, to close the opportunity gap for underrepresented students across the Commonwealth, which includes students of color, students who are economically disadvantaged, first-generation to college students, students with disabilities, and English learners. There is an expectation that by design, youth from underrepresented populations will be prioritized and supported in these high-quality pathways. Programs should be structured to eliminate barriers to student participation. In 2017, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, along with the Board of Higher Education, voted to approve the formation of an early college joint committee to oversee the development of a designation process. The members of the Early College Joint Committee are Chair Chris Grabielli of BHE, Board Member Paul Toner of BHE, Chair Catherine Craven of Bessie, Board Member Matt Hills of Bessie, and Secretary Pizer. Commissioner Riley and Commissioner Santiago also sit on the board as non-voting members. This interactive map identifies where designated pathway programs are located throughout the state. Pathway programs undergo a rigorous 2-part application process to be approved for designation. For early college, which are shown on this map, schools are primarily partnering with higher education institutions. There are currently 26 designated early college programs in partnership with 38 high schools and 20 higher education partners. In the fall of 2020, there were approximately 33,000 students participating across the Commonwealth. We have several other partnerships that are currently under review for designation. Whether a full wall-to-wall high school or as a program within a school, early college is distinct from traditional dual enrollment. In Massachusetts, cohorts of students take at least 12 strategically sequenced college courses aligned with Mass Core and Mass Transfer and provided at no cost to them. They receive enhanced academic and non-academic guidance and support prior to beginning and during their college coursework. They learn how their guided academic pathways are related and connected to career opportunities. And they benefit from being part of an early college community that eases the transition from high school to college, so they can graduate from high school with a significant number of college credits, habits, and skills needed to be successful in college and career, thereby reducing their time and cost to college degree completion. In Massachusetts, early college students commit and enroll in the program in 9th or 10th grade. We allow for some flexibility in models, but generally in 9th grade, students are exposed to the early college pathway options. They might participate in college and career exploratory courses. In 10th grade, students typically apply and commit to the early college program. They begin on-ramping activities and or preparation for college coursework. 10th grade may also begin taking college courses, either at the high school or college campus. If relevant to their program, students may select which of the early college guided academic pathways to pursue. Often these pathways are loosely modeled on meta majors such as STEM or business. In 11th and 12th grade, students continue participating in additional activities that prepare them for college and then they take their bulk of their college coursework. While early college students are required to pursue a minimum of 12 credits before high school graduation, many students are able to pursue even more. For example, the wall-to-wall program, the early college wall-to-wall program at New Heights Charter School in Brockton is getting ready to graduate its first cohort of early college students, and they have reported that 51% of them are on track to earn an associate degree at the time of high school graduation.
Kristen, can you stop for 1 second to reflect that point? That's a big number, right?
It's remarkable, yeah. 51%, so that will be next couple weeks. Aggregated demographic data of the early college program shows that the majority of early college students identify as Black and Latinx. There's a gender imbalance with more females participating currently than males. We'll work with programs to continue to address that. About half the students in the program are from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. National data over the period of many years has proven the success of the early college model, and the emerging data in Massachusetts on early college is also promising. In both 2019 and 2020, 90% of the early college students, they're in the blue bars, were able to complete Mass Core requirements, a significantly higher rate than that of their school peers in the orange bars. And this effect is maintained even when the data is disaggregated by race and ethnicity. We also looked at FAFSA completion rates. Although we did see a dip in early college FAFSA completion this past January, early college students continue to complete FAFSA at a higher rate than their peers even then, and currently their completion rate is on par with that of their 2019 early college cohort despite the pandemic. Our programs did a lot to really intentionally get students to finish their FAFSAs this year. This slide is of utmost importance to the early college initiative. It indicates college enrollment rates within 6 months of high school graduation. In both years, early college students maintained a 20 percentage point difference in college enrollment over their school peers, even with the impact of the pandemic. It should be noted that individual school data for 2020 does seem to indicate that some school communities' college enrollments were harder hit by the impact of the pandemic than others, and we will continue to work with these programs to consider increased intentional supports for their early college students moving forward. And with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague to tell you about innovation pathways.
Thank you, Kristen. This thing on. Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's afternoon, just about. Jennifer Gwatkin, Innovation Pathways Lead here at DESE. So Massachusetts Innovation Pathways draw on 3 decades of successful practices that enhance a student's ability to gain awareness of future employment opportunities, fully prepare academically, and make informed choices related to post-secondary paths in their area in the industry of their interest. Innovation Pathways are structured offerings at our academic and comprehensive high schools that are products of strong partnerships with their local mass hire workforce development boards, along with area employers. The intent of Innovation Pathways is to introduce students to a wide range of career opportunities within industry sectors that are broadly defined and in high demand in the Commonwealth. By participating in innovation pathways, students develop knowledge and skills related to their chosen field of study before they graduate high school. Innovation pathways are designed to be a coherent 3 to 4 year experience for students beginning in either the 9th or the 10th grade when the student commits to the program. While in the pathway, students complete MyCap, that's my career and academic plan, and take 2 technical courses into advanced courses. Technical courses, as we define them, are aligned with and relate to the industry sector that defines the pathway. These courses should provide students with applied knowledge and skills related to the industry and prepare students for workplace experiences. The technical course intensity is not the same as the technical courses required for Chapter 74 programs, which correspond to specific occupation competencies. Advanced courses are required to promote college-level academic skill building. In the case of innovation pathways, these courses can be advanced placement, dual enrollment, articulated credit, international baccalaureate, or project lead the way. It is also encouraged that innovation pathway students have the opportunity to earn industry-recognized credentials where available and appropriate. Over the course of their chosen pathway, students participate in the continuum of career development education with career awareness and exploration in the earlier years of the pathway, leading up to a culminating 100-hour immersive experience, either an internship or a capstone, which we consider to be the hallmark of innovation pathways. So 5 industry sectors were pre-selected to simplify the designation process. These sectors are manufacturing, healthcare and social assistance, information, environmental and life sciences, and business and finance. These 5 were chosen based on feedback from education, workforce, economic development, and industry leaders who are shepherding regional planning supported by the Workforce Skills Cabinet. The chosen sectors also aligned to state-level labor market information and workforce skills gap analyses. Over the last year and a half, the Innovation Pathways community of practice has come to life. This community consists of administrators and educators at schools that are current or prospective innovation pathway designees, representatives from their local MassHire or other workforce, industry, and nonprofit partners directly connected to the work, and DESE agency staff focused on innovation pathways. The mission is to build connections to foster a collaborative and reflective community of practitioners. In partnership with the Boston-based Center for Collaborative Education, we offer tailored professional development in the form of regular workshops, webinars, site visits. Well, we haven't done one of those in about a year. We did do a virtual site visit and other modes. So this community practice is designed to be relevant to the Innovation Pathway community and responsive to their needs. So whether a school is working to plan a new pathway or is an established designee focused on ongoing development and continuous improvement, these professional development and technical assistance offerings are designed to be supportive. So we are also collaborating with the STEM Advisory Council and Northeastern University, Network for Experiential Teaching and Learning, or NEXT, to bring work-based learning to scale through the complementary Massachusetts Work Immersion Network, which is we're calling MassWin. The goal of MassWin is to build a robust catalog of high-quality, reusable, employer-driven work-based learning templates that are Massachusetts sector-specific and provide students with technology-enabled, technically supported internships, capstones, and co-ops. A pilot is currently running to train and support innovation pathways in Chapter 74 educators in the use of Practera, which is the instructional technology that is used to support work-based learning. So a little bit about our numbers. So the program began in 2017. We have an annual designation process that's similar to early college. The inaugural designation process in 2017-18 yielded 7 designations, and since then we've been steadily growing. Even in pandemic times, there's enthusiasm for the program and high engagement in our professional learning community. As of March 2021, we have 49 high schools and 43 districts that are participating. And across these 49 high schools, there are 121 pathways. Through intentional leveraging of the Connecting Activities Network, all 16 MassHire boards are engaged and working to support schools. And over 300 employers, which is probably a low estimate, are involved. And as of October 2020, those SIMs, 2,189 students are participating. And of course, these numbers don't reflect the 22 new pathways that were designated just in this last March. And here is one of the last site visits that we did. Secretary Pizer, you're in the one on the right. It was a pleasure to get out and be with Secretary Pizer and Lieutenant Governor back in January in Brockton. And now I'm going to transition to Julia Landau from the Massachusetts Advocates for Children to speak to you about the Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative, or MACE. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it okay to take my mask off when I talk, or do you want me to leave it on?
I think you have to leave it on.
Leave it on,
Yeah.
okay. My glasses are going to fog up.
You know, it's an impossible.
They just did by laughing. I'm Julia Landau from Mass Advocates for Children. I really appreciate the chance to participate in this panel and talk about these important issues. More than a decade ago, Massachusetts launched Mabese. Whoops, we got to flip. The Massachusetts Inclusive Concurrent Enrollment Initiative that we call Mabese. And the reason this was launched, it's a discretionary grant program that opens the door to higher ed opportunities for individuals with intellectual disabilities and autism. And as you know, people with intellectual disabilities have historically been excluded from the benefits of our state's higher ed system. So with the support of DESE and the Department of Higher Ed, Mabese has been implemented over these many years in a way that mirrors many of the elements you just heard Kristen and Jennifer talk about with early college and innovation pathways. It's based on very close relationships between the UMass and, there's colleges participating from UMass, the state universities, and the community colleges that have close partnerships with the districts. The connections emphasize career and employment. There's very robust student support. The students can audit classes. They can get college credits if they meet the class requirements for credit, but the majority of the students audit the classes. As you know, students with more significant disabilities who don't receive a diploma continue to receive services through the district until age 22. And while their non-disabled high school peers graduate and they move on to college or to jobs in the community, so for the most part, because of that, most 18 to 22-year-olds are typically educated in separate classrooms within their school district, removed from their same age peers. Through Mabese, special ed departments in the school districts work very closely with the colleges and universities to provide the robust supports that can include often an education coach who works directly with individual students so that they can participate in the full range of academic classes. They can get the supports they need to be fully integrated into the life of the campus, and they gain the independent living skills needed to navigate the campus and to make choices independently. I forgot to move the slides. And they're not moving. So what national research shows is that there's a huge impact on the employment rate. Individuals with intellectual disabilities who've had the chance to participate in college are employed at rates that are more than 3 times higher than the rate for individuals with intellectual disabilities who don't have the college opportunities. The employment rate is 65% for these students. In our state, there's currently around 100 school districts that are participating, and about 200 young adults with intellectual disabilities and autism who are participating in college, and about half of our state colleges and universities are currently participating in this grant program. And I just wanted to end briefly with an example about one of the students, Brian, who is a young man with Down syndrome, who was able to attend college through Mabese. He was one of the first students who was able to do so. He had an education coach who supported him, so he was able to participate in a range of courses, auditing courses such as marketing, sociology, communications, acting. He had the ed coach not only helped him on campus, but supported him to learn how to travel independently on public transportation. So instead of taking the specialized special ed van and services that many individuals with more significant disabilities take, he learned to travel independently, which is obviously cost effective for the district, but gave him really important skills to transition successfully as an adult. He launched a new club at the college. He was voted to be on the student council. He testified at the State House in support of this initiative, and he is now employed working at the State House 3 days a week, and he travels on his own to work because of the skills that he learned by going to college. And I think what Brian shows is that Mabese, similar to early college and innovation pathways, opens doors to students historically excluded so that these students can thrive and contribute to their communities. And we really appreciate all the support of the board and the department in supporting these initiatives. Thank you.
Given my prerogative as chair, I get to speak first. And, this is something that I want to thank former Chair Paul Sagan, as well as current Chair of the Board of Higher Ed, Chris Gabrielli, who have been real leaders in the way. And when we think about government and what we do here as a board, and we talked about that at the outset of this meeting, and we're going to have more discussions about it, but this is a program that really was generated by board members of different boards getting together and thinking of ways to do something a little differently outside the box, right? And it's completely impressive to me that we are the inheritors of this good work, too, for our kids. So it's also one of the rare places where we talk about students with intellectual disabilities achieving in the workforce, as opposed to just simply, when we talk about them at the board level, a lot of the language is around IEPs and things like that, right? So I feel like this is we're at the tip of something here, and I think if we could come back with, there were 3 different sort of things represented here today. So I just wanted to make sure that we keep this discussion going, and maybe even meet some of your students like Brian later on, Julia, who can really, as I mentioned, you touch and feel, you see, then you understand. It's hard for us to even see with the data here how important these programs are. In a year when FAFSA applications were low, this pathway, I think, has probably been a godsend to a lot of students for access to higher education. So I want to thank you for your work, and then open it up to questions. And there we go, Payman, Member Hannaford.
First of all, I just want to echo Chair Craven's comments. I thought that was incredible, and I took so much from it. And first time I'm hearing and learning about Mabese, knew a little bit about innovation pathways and a lot about early college, and I've always been a deep admirer of that model. I wanted to make a point around the sort of distinction between credentials and college credits. So I will say it's really refreshing that innovation pathways is being presented, alongside early college and Mabese with its higher education focus. But there's always been this sort of unofficial wall between credentials and college credit generating programs. And I just want to name that because I've become somewhat obsessed with the notion of jobs first higher education, meaning workforce credentials that are industry recognized and provide a quick, rapid pathway, affordable pathway, I should say, to economic stability that generates college credits and doesn't foreclose future higher educational attainment. And I think coming out of the pandemic and the devastating economic toll, for many Americans, particularly younger Americans, there's a need for a quicker path to economic stability. And it shouldn't be this sort of thing over there that doesn't come with college credits. And I just wonder if there's a way to bridge that divide, given you two are sitting right next to each other, and if early college could also become early credential to college. I feel as though this is actually a pretty fixable solution that could benefit however many millions of Americans, and starting here in the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Member Fernandez.
I had a similar thought, but slightly different question to Member Hannaford, which was around the responsibility of employers. And I myself benefited from being able to get a degree while I was working full-time in a company. And so I wonder sort of what the conversations are with employers, that maybe there is the credentialing to get into a position, but then later on as you're working, be able to work toward a college degree if you so wish.
That certainly would be ideal. I know that that tons of people have benefited from that. I'm kind of looking at Secretary Pizer. I know that we want to focus a lot on the employer engagement as we advance this initiative, trying to get some real champions out there for this. So stay tuned.
Any other comments? Member Hills, did you have any comments? Being the other member of the board who's, I don't want to hog the spotlight from you.
I'll just say something, I mean, particularly about the early college program, so I don't mean this at the expense of the other two, but it's been really interesting for me to be involved and learn about this. And I always have kind of one takeaway when I go to these kind of joint meetings, which is this addresses so many key priorities, not only of DESE and our board, but the Department of Higher Ed and their board, and Secretary Pizer's administration. And the amount of money we're talking about is a tiny fraction of a rounding error to ramp up this program of what goes into Chapter 70. And everything's a tiny fraction of a rounding error of what goes into Chapter 70. I understand that, but it's remarkable. You're talking about primarily students of color, primarily low income, primarily in that it impacts future workforce issues that we have in Massachusetts. And to just layer one more thing on top, you've got this collaboration of the Department of Higher Ed, the Board of Higher Ed, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and the board, and Secretary Piser's administration. And somehow Secretary Piser manages to find the funding to kind of make this work, and a little bit more each year. And I would just say this addresses so many priorities, and it's worked so well in other states like it has here. This is just waiting to be scaled up. Thank you for what you've done, and I hope you have a lot more to be able to do a lot more with it.
Mr. Secretary.
Now you're embarrassing me, Matt. But first of all the credit goes to Governor Baker's administration, not mine. Just to be clear, need to get the credit right. I was with Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito just on Friday, I guess, at New Heights, and we met some of those students who were graduating with their associate's degree, including, I think, 2 16-year-olds, which is really quite remarkable. Wow. One of the things, one sort of topic I just want to sort of put out there for not only us to kind of keep thinking about, but also the Board of Higher Education and others, is the extent to which the credentials that they earn and the credits they earn are fully transferable into their college that they attend. There was one graduate who was attending Northeastern, and Northeastern was fully accepting her associate's degree, so she was effectively starting. Anybody knows what Northeastern costs? That's a huge, huge savings. There was another university, which will go nameless. It was out of state, I'm glad to say, which accepted none of her credits. So I think there's some things that we need to do from a policy point of view to make sure that this on-ramp to college is sort of fully realized. And I think there's a lot that we can do. And I think most of the universities, certainly the public sector here in Massachusetts, are doing everything they can to make that on-ramp possible. The other point I want to make, which in many ways I think builds on what Payman was talking about, is we are sort of making efforts to create credentialed pathways through innovation pathways. But there's a lot of work to do there to both align the curriculum to those industry recognized credentials and to identify credentials that actually have sort of market value, but also that can be converted into post-secondary credentials or post-secondary credits, so that this can be an on-ramp to further education down the road as students move from high school either directly into career or directly into higher education. At the end of the day, you know, both of these pathways, I think, represent, in some ways, the biggest opportunity we have to transform what high school looks like. So the way this is, you know, we've been talking about this, is it's sort of a piece of a high school program or something for some kids, not all kids. And that's certainly the right way to get it started. We should be doing it incrementally, but I think the upside potential for this is huge in terms of making high school a relevant, engaging, exciting, and productive experience for students. And as the Commissioner has said so many times, that is way too often not the case. And that's, in some ways, I don't know if it's not the last frontier, to be sure, but it is really, in some ways, the next phase of education reform, especially in the secondary level. And I think the work that Kristen and Jen have been doing here is just really tremendously important. I want to thank them for their leadership and thank the Commissioner for his support in making this a reality.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? It's such a great thing to talk about outcomes rather than process, and here's an example of both that work. So, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any
Madam
other?
Chair,
I think the Commissioner will give us
I know that Matt covered most of the budget discussions, so I'm sure we can forego Bill today, although I promise he will be back next month. And I think some board members want a little bit extra time to kind of get their own calendars in line. to figure out what we're going to do when we pick dates for next year. So I would recommend we just postpone that calendar-setting event till the beginning of the meeting in June. And with that, I think we're wrapped up. I know we've gone longer than usual, but we appreciate everyone's diligence and patience during the meeting.
Thank you. And a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Anyone seconding? Thank you, Member Fernandez. All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it.